Great. Okay, so we do record these so people can watch them later. So welcome everybody. I am Irene Scricky. I'm a volunteer with OPH, and I just volunteer to help moderate these calls, just so Marnie can focus on the content and not have to worry about reading the chat and answering any other questions that might come up, and admitting people, which I will continue to do. So this is a great crew. So this, I think, is around. We're doing these about every other week. Marnie George is as OPH's trainer, contracted trainer to be available to help both fosters and adopters who are having issues with dogs. And she's been a great resource in 5 or 6-ish, 7th months that you've been with us. And we've been doing these calls every other week to let people ask questions, and we cover a different topic each time. But we usually start off with Marnie saying a few words about the topic, and then of course we can have questions and answers. I can't figure out how to tilt this to not have my ceiling be so prominent, but no one's looking at me anyways. We're looking at Marnie now. So,
oh gosh,
today, that's right. Pressure's on.
Hi, Ginger. All right, I think you're our most regular viewer.
Yeah, we have
familiar face.
Hello. So anyways, so today's topic is
Hi, Barbara. Good to see
10 tips for reactive dogs.
Yes. This one's for you, Barbara.
So Marnie, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off with some initial thoughts, and then we will take questions and hear about people's issues after you've had a chance to kind of intro the topic. So welcome everybody. And you can also send questions in through the chat. I will be monitoring that so that Marnie can focus on the content.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. Thank you so much for coming. It's so kind of OPH to put on these calls for everybody's advancement in learning and help. So please, any feedback or comments, we'd love to try and get some different trainers in at different times and have different perspectives and viewpoints, not just me waffling on all the time, but we're working on that too. So thank you for tuning in, and any feedback, any comments, any questions to OPH training email, it would be wonderful. We'll link that somewhere during this call. Can I have a quick show of hands? Who here actively has a reactive dog? So I know how hungry our crowd is. I see 1 or 2 going up. I can't see everybody. So how many would you say, Irene?
I'm sorry, I was too busy trying to get my hand to show up in the camera, so I was not able.
Got you. Oh, I see hands. Oh, thank you. That's a good show of hands. Right. Okay. I see a lot of hands. It is crazy, isn't it, how reactive dogs have gotten. I've been doing this. I'm 47 years old. I've been doing this. I started in England, where dogs are a lot less reactive in England. We get a lot less dog-to-dog issues in England. And I think one of the biggest reasons is people use a lot of space. There's not as much industrialized, built up areas, not as much stimuli. Reactivity, what is it? It is the inability of a dog to cope with a stimulus or trigger. They are over their emotional ability to cope with what they're seeing visually, hearing audibly from the traffic or dogs or people, or just the stimulus of outside birds, all the competing noises and smells take them to a certain level of hyperarousal or hypervigilance. And then reactivity is the inability to cope. They're literally just over their ability to cope. So as much of a nuisance, as annoying, as awful, and it is awful, it almost makes us prisoners with some of these dogs. And there's so many of them. So we all need to learn how to deal with it better. It's really tough on the dog, but it's really tough on people. I feel for the people on this one so strongly, because it's just so hard. You're just trying to exercise the dog. So you've got vibrations in the road from cars traveling. You've got the scent of diesel. You've got dog sense. You've got bird sense. All that information goes through the dog's different various ways of sensing things, through the nose, through the ears, through the fur, through the paws. All of it's being processed, and the dog just hasn't been taught to cope with a few of these parts individually by themselves. So it means, like, if your dog's showing a trigger, i.e. people, i.e. dogs, i.e. cars. Dogs are reactive to different things in different situations. So it's a very generalized topic. And what we can do is do some breakout groups. If people have got dog reactivity or people coming to the home, I have a foster here. He will eat people. I literally can't send him out. And he's been with me several months. He will literally crunch, but he's the perfect dog. He's the easiest dog in the world. But people come to the house, he's gonna get them. Nothing I've done in 4 months has changed that, except now I have a lot more safety barriers in place. He will tell me when he's triggered. He'll run to his own crate. He will put himself out of the room. He will bark explosively, and I've encouraged him to tell me if he's trapped in a situation, he'll tell somebody instead of just biting now. He used to just strike and seem okay, and then out of anywhere, just lunge and bite. So I'm with you. I work with these cases every day, all day. And sometimes it ends in euthanasia because the dog, or sometimes very sadly, we just had a very high profile case in the training world. Denise Fenzi, an amazing trainer, of obedience trainer. She does things I could never, ever do. And she works with very high drive dogs. She just had to return her dog Dice to the breeder for reactivity, and the whole kind of training world was shook because it's like a trainer of that noun couldn't deal with it. He was so dog reactive. She was a prisoner in her own home. He was reactive to, he just wanted attention all the time. So that brings me to my first point about reactivity. Dogs are either training us to give them what they need, or they're giving us behaviors. They're acting out on unmet emotional needs. So they get OCD with training us to meet their attention. And that's kind of what happened in this case. He just worked her so she couldn't do anything else. She had no other life. She said, I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. Then he's miserable because I have other people. I have other dogs. He's miserable. I can't keep him. Like I said, one of the best trainers in the industry gave up. She did the best, safest thing. She took the dog back to the breeder. They're trying to see if they can find an environment that doesn't stimulate him and a working program. They may send him to a trainer with different methods. Like, she's done all the positives. They may send him to somebody with more of a working military program or something, or the dog may be euthanized. We don't know yet, but she did the right thing. So people give up at every level with reactivity. It's exhausting. It goes in your body. You're just trying to take the dog for a walk. So the first point, sorry, I may have mentioned the first point before, but the first point I want to make, number one on mine, is where do we practice with reactivity? The first most important point I deal with is, where's my safe space where the dog isn't reactive? Where is the complete absence of reactivity? And we practice there. We will practice indoors. We will practice just on our doorstep. I live in on the edge of the city. So I've got lots of stimuli outside. So, I know what it's like to go outside and there's stimuli right there. But I practice on my doorstep. I practice back and forth, practice in the bathroom. I will drive out and find, hi, Laurie, I see you now. Thanks for texting me. I'm so glad you're all available when I have complete technological issues. No, I mean, I didn't see yours. So where do we practice is the most important point, because you do have to practice with reactivity. There's no getting out of school with reactivity. If you walk the dog into the environment they're reactive in, and you don't have several layers and buffers of emotional fitness, preparation and training with your relationship in place, and this can take a couple days, it can happen in a couple days. I'm not saying anything very difficult. I'm just saying the dog has either learned to train you to go into an environment they're not emotionally ready for, and then they're just expressing their emotional unfitness. They're having a meltdown. They need help, but they're training us to follow them on the leash. This is the biggest problem I have. So where to practice takes us out of a place where you can't focus because the dog's going off. Gotta find a place. We can't fix it. We cannot fix it. I cannot help you if we don't get point one done. We have to practice inside with getting the dog to look at us, not pulling, coming back and forth. As everybody who's followed me before, I've talked about this a lot, but since we have so many new people, I use a front fastening harness clipped to the collar. There are so many different ones. I can help you. There's a freedom harness and there's Easy Walk, are my two most used. If they don't work for you, you can send us a message and I can send resources links. But Easy Walk, freedom harness, okay? Front fastening takes the dog off balance when they pull, but there's not one tool. I don't care if it's a prong collar, an e-collar, a harness, a front harness, a back harness, a martingale, a head collar. I don't know what you're using, but if you're following a dog that pulls, there's no tool on the earth that will help you. When the dog puts tension on the leash and your feet move, they are training you to go deeper in the paint to where they're now more overstimulated and they feel like you're passive. Dogs feel tension on a leash, and that's the biggest reason for reactivity. The biggest reason for reactivity is barriers, leashes, trap spaces, tight spaces where the dog feels they either can't leave or they've got an excuse like guarding, territorial, or being stuck there frustrated. It's frustrated energy gone wrong, or it can be fear energy not able to get away. Thank you so much. You're so kind for putting that link in there. So the first thing I do is put a front fastening harness and a long leash. It's counterintuitive. Point number 2 is how tense are we? What's our tension like? Our tension on a leash is what will dictate the level of reactivity. So you've got to practice, go back to where do we practice? We got to practice having a loose leash and getting the dog to move and then come away from any distraction. And you've got to find things that they're not reactive about to practice this with. We get them distracted at something out there, get someone to help you, toss treats, have toys, have something the dog wants, but the dog starts to dismiss us on the leash, right? We become ignored, or in the house, or where the car is, wherever you are and the reactivity is happening at the vet, wherever it is, we are now irrelevant. So then point 2 is tension. We have to practice reducing and eliminating tension quickly before we're over the dog's ability to respond, right? So we practice that so much that I had one of our callers, Irene, written an email, and another caller has one of our dogs now that I coached. I think it's Ryan, might see tonight, but people are out there right now really struggling with this, where they're caught off guard, like everything seems okay and all of a sudden it goes awfully wrong and you're in an emergency situation. So if I will talk about that later. Bring me back to it if you don't hear me address it, because the emergency when you're in there, but I don't want to start there. I don't even want to tell you what to do there right now, because we've gotten so far in, we haven't practiced. We really have to go to school on this. And my third point is, what's the dog's job? On a walk or in a situation where they're reacting, they're switching into their genetics, their coding, and their socialization, what they've been taught to accept as normal and what they haven't figured out to handle, right? So if they can't handle other dogs because they want to play with them and they're frustrated and they can't get to them and they've got this leash, they get barky and reactive and lungy. If they're afraid, sometimes the best offense is a defense. And on a leash, they feel trapped, or in the house or in a corner behind a fence, they feel trapped, or they feel like they need to guard you. And so they flip into a predator mindset of the best defense is a good offense. Send the scary thing away, or go crunch the scary thing, eliminate the threat, face the threat, or if they feel they can't get away. So we have to number 2, tension. We have to teach the dog to release tension. Does that make sense? Have I lost anybody on that? Because it's the most important thing that we have to do it. Is anyone got a question? Sorry, I thought I saw a hand go up. If we're on a leash and the dog pulls, or the dog is stiff, or the dog is fixated and you're irrelevant, you've already set yourself up to fail. We have to back off and find the point at which the dog was able to turn around, follow you, pay attention, come away. They can see it and you can think you're okay and you keep going, or they going, and you tighten up, you pull on the leash, you get stiff, you hold your breath, your mouth goes closed. The dog can feel all that without looking at you. They're incredibly in tune. And if you've got one step of following a dog that's pulling you at any other time, the dog already believes they have to cope by themselves. This is the biggest thing people don't know. The dog feels alone, that they have to do something about it, right? So you have to get that front fastening harness on. You have to get a long leash, hold the leash at your belly button, teach the dog to go away and sniff. And when you stop moving, they have to do something to get you to move again. The dog needs a job. So number 3 is, what's the dog's job? The dog needs a job to come back and get you or make you go away from triggers. We need to train the dog to do the work and not us micromanaging and constantly giving feedback. No, shh, whatever it is, or yes, come here, sweetie, come on, let's go. We're constantly verbalizing and reacting. Instead of being ahead of it and proactive, we're often defensively reacting. And the dog is fixated on external stimuli. Remember, if they're reactive, they're overloaded in their brain for something they weren't prepared to do. It's just the science of it. They're just unprepared for these triggers, and they become hyper vigilant. They're scanning the environment or listening for these triggers, because it's also a release of chemicals in the body that's addictive. When they get to express and go big, it doesn't feel great, but because they're doing something about it and they don't have a better tool, it's addictive. So it gets worse and worse. It gets entrenched, it gets stuck. So we have to go somewhere quiet. We have to use the car as a place to bail to, or the house. So if you're too far from a place or a quiet spot you can get to remove the trigger stacking that's taken place, whether it's in the house or on a walk, you've got to find a place where there's quiet, there's chill, there's calm, and the dog can decompress before they become so over aroused that they can't cope. And what I'd like to do next time, if we've got the interest, I'd like to make a few little video clips of the foster I've got here, this little guy, with his crunching of people and how he gets reactive and how he's expressed himself. So I'll make a few little video clips to follow up on actually physically, so you can visually see. But this is the theory of it and questions, so our brains can understand. But you want your harness, you want the dog to go, and then when you stop, you need to turn your back on a behavior which is pulling, which is tension. The dog's stiff, the dog's checking out. If you feel irrelevant to the dog, you feel like you may as well just be an automaton, because you're just following along and this dog's doing everything. If the dog isn't checking in with you and coming back and training with you on the walk, we have our problem right there. And that's where we can address it. So we are going to turn our back on the dog. We're going to wait. This is without the trigger present. This is practicing, because once you get to where you see the dog get aroused, you can intervene very quickly before the dog's aroused. Now, some of us have it where the dog's over aroused the minute they step out the door. We just have to go and do 100 drills of going in and out and in and out. Go out and feed. Turn your back on the dog when they leave you, or they put tension, or they're stiff, or they're distracted. Have your feet steady like a rock. Have your hand at your belly button, and turn away, and then drop. The minute the dog comes to get you, now you need a toy or food. You gotta have something. Remember, point number 3 was the job of the dog. The dog has to have something to work towards. They have to get a paycheck of some kind. It's just how dogs have been bred for centuries by human beings on purpose to go do a job, like kill rats or find bombs or whatever it is, move the sheep, whatever it is that we've used the dog in daily life for. Now, when we've got these pets in suburbia or rural areas where they're having problems, they haven't tapped into a working drive enough. So we need to be rock steady about teaching the dog to go away from us, be distracted, watch our signals for rejecting that behavior, turning our back, holding steady. And then when the dog gets bored enough to come back and get you, or eventually the dog comes back and gets you, positively associate that with high value. Drop that chicken on the ground, get that tug out, flap it around, go crazy. Do that over and over and over again, so that when you see something out there, You can do number 4, you can retreat and bail. Number 4 is my next most important thing that I do. I have a bail plan everywhere I go, or I don't go there. If I can't get somewhere, into a bush, up a dark alley, into a field, back into the house, into the car, just on a street, if I have to, if I'm in somewhere like Washington, D.C., I will find and navigate a place where I can just retreat a little bit into a nook and get their attention back on me and feed. But if you haven't practiced them volunteering, number 5 is the dog's co-opting in. The dog is literally looking for opportunities to train you to feed them or play with them. Those are the 2 easiest ones, right? We could use, if we wanted to, it's a tool in our toolbox, we could use prong collars or punishment to shut the behavior down. We know we can, because there's a raging debate by people whether it's right or wrong to do it. The point is moot. Punishment, if the dog associates the punishment with the trigger or with your relationship, you're gonna see worse behaviors pop up elsewhere. It's scientifically proven. You've got to know your tools and when to use it. Reactivity is the worst one for punishment, and it's why there's so much reactivity. So many people are trained, number 6, so many people are trained to have eyes of no instead of eyes of yes. We're trained to see what we don't want, and we try and micromanage it instead of using what dogs, now this is important. Dogs learn by operant conditioning. They learn by consequences. They learn by what's going on in the environment, what works, what doesn't work. They associate and they learn with consequences, good or bad consequences. They don't need to be punishments, but they do need to be consequences. If a dog's having a reaction, and you've gotten there, we're trying to do everything we can to leave before the reaction, but the consequences, we bail. So my point about bailing is I have a bail point everywhere I go. And I just don't go anywhere. I don't go anywhere where I can't bail and give the dog a consequence. We're leaving we're leaving before there's a reaction. We're leaving to go get food. The dog's so used to me turning around, and he knows the dogs I walk now, they go off. The minute I turn my back now, they will come immediately. I don't even have to say anything. And then of course you add in, let's go. If you can do a high-pitched squeaky voice, find a manly way to do that for the gentleman amongst us or the deep voiced amongst us. Some girls don't want to do squeaky voices, but it works. If you just get attention, it cuts through the noise. But urgency, if you can use urgency, let's go. But you already trained the turning of your back, right? So you've already conditioned the dog that you leave. You don't accept tension. You don't take crap on the leash. The dog's not training you to follow it into over arousal and start working you to. Dogs are training us and they're working us to go and explore. But if they're not emotionally and physically ready to explore, we're not doing them any favors by walking them. We're walking our dogs way too soon in environments that they're not prepared for. There's different components like all the noise, the vibrations, the smells, the distraction. Your guys' relationships, what happens when you put a leash onto your relationship? It goes down the toilet sometimes because a dog's getting all of its rewards outside, but all the sniffs are and all the entertainment for the dog is outside. In the house is a calm, boring place. Sometimes outside is where it's all happening, but they're training us to move deeper and deeper into an environment, and then boom, you get an explosion or a reaction. Whether it's from fear or frustration, it doesn't really matter. We have to prepare for leash walking beforehand, and we have to prepare the dog to work for us. We're not working our dogs enough. This is a problem I see. We haven't learned. We get a dog, we enjoy a dog, but we haven't learned how much they rely on having a job. They are conditioned for generations genetically to look for a job that suits their genetics and works with us. Only we're not doing our end of it, right? We're feeding them for free in a bowl. So they're not getting that as a paycheck. And they're playing by themselves, or we're not controlling the resources enough so that when the dog gives us attention, we provide food and toys, play. We provide all the movement, exploration, and sniffing. When a dog cooperates with me, I give them all the things they want. Is this making sense so far? Okay, so let me now go to my little list. And let's talk about some useful tools for 7 and 8.
Can I ask some questions about the pulling and the following and all that?
Yes.
So things are a little bit better with Kuno. I am not
Okay.
medicating him. And I
Wow.
actually think that the medication might have been making him mistrust me. I don't know, but
Your intuition, I trust it completely.
yeah,
Sometimes
I think it's just
sometimes
not, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he probably still needs something, but it's not what we was taking.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, there are a few questions I have about him leading and turning away and all of that, because he is afraid of so many things that, like I'm really only walking him in 2 places. I live
Yes.
2 blocks from Rock Creek Park, a path there, and I take him down there. And then I also drive him to another spot that's less populated with wider paths.
Yes.
And sometimes we go with another dog. And when we're with this other dog, he is happy, 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 less
That's
fearful.
great. That's wonderful.
Gets better from, but the thing about the nook and like finding a spot.
Yes.
Because for a while
It's
I was
sweetheart.
doing this, like every time we walk, because we walk down a street with a fairly narrow sidewalk to get to the park. And there are always people and cars and things and
Yes.
garbage
already
pails and whatever. I mean, there's just
Mhm.
no way to avoid it.
Mhm.
So every time somebody started coming up the street towards us, I would run into a driveway and try to do what you said, like, hey, look at
Right.
me. I
Right.
could
Right.
not
Right.
get his attention.
Yep.
And he was
Yep.
doing a lot of this, just looking. He only wanted to look. So
Yep.
anyhow, his previous owner
Fixated.
came
Mhm.
for a week, for a day, and showed me how she dealt with him. And it was weird. He either didn't recognize her or she was person non grata.
Yes.
He never showed any attachment behavior towards her.
Yes.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it was very disconcerting. But
Yes.
then when we walked together, she was able to put him on a lead and he kind of fell in with her.
Yes.
So
she had the working mode, but not
Yeah.
the affection and really
well,
the
maybe there was,
relationship.
no, I think there was affection in their relationship. It's that he would not, I don't know if it's that he just had no
Yes.
memory,
Huh.
or she's associated with the dog that beat him up,
Interesting.
or he hates her because she left
Right.
him.
Who
I don't
knows?
know. But in any event, what she said,
Yeah.
no, don't run off the street, just ply him with food.
Right.
So now when somebody's walking up the street, I don't try to duck.
Right.
I just give him food. I
Just
start
feed him
giving
as it's
food.
happening and so that's counter conditioning. That's
Yes.
counter conditioning. Sometimes you can't do that in proximity. Sometimes you can't do that when they're approaching, but she'd practiced it. So she counter conditioned. Here's the trigger. Now I'm adding food before he's lost it, before he can't eat. So when they can't
Right.
eat, you're done.
Right.
But she'd added it in before the trigger became so much. And I just watched a Ken Ramirez doing that exact thing with a dog that wanted to eat goats, just standing there, and they went past while they feed. That's a brilliant tool if the dog has been conditioned.
Right.
So the dog has to be counter conditioned that the trigger now means food. And that's definitely on my list here because that is a huge one.
Now
Yeah.
let me ask
I like to use space. I like to use space because the dog's relief mentally. But if your dog's staying fixated, then he's not got those other components in place before the trigger does not allow him to give you the attention. He's not been conditioned enough at an easier level.
Right.
At a much
and even in this like more remote path in the park.
Yes.
I mean, I can see him go into like a fear mode for something that I can't hear or see.
Wow. Fear mode. What's fear mode? What does that look like?
I see him like, his tail will start to go down. He'll start to tense up.
Wow.
He'll start to pull a little bit. Or he won't want to go because he's afraid of what might be around the corner.
Yeah.
And this will be for something that like might be across the valley.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's you have an incredibly difficult case. I can't wait to meet you in person. We're going to make this happen.
But but the one thing is, so I do have the leash, the leash and the harness and the whatever that you're talking about.
Yes.
So anyhow, whenever we come back from a walk, especially in my neighborhood,
Yes.
He's pretty happy in the woods, and especially when we get into this one area where it's looser and he's cool, and he's getting more used to meeting people and
Yes.
whatever. But on the way home, he tenses up.
Really?
And it's like, just as I'm getting tired, because Rock Creek's very hilly.
Yes.
And it's all the way straight up a very steep hill to get back to my house, hill after hill. I've just started to take the leash, tie it around me,
Yes.
and let him pull me up the hill,
Yes.
because he's in fear mode, and
Yes.
it's easier for me because I'm not trying to,
Yes.
like, I feel like when he's in that mode, I can't, if I turn around, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
He's just
yes.
stuck.
He's stuck. He's locked because he's been conditioned of what his response is to meet his needs. His response is to go hunt, to bolt, to just push through, to go. He's locked and loaded, and he's a very specific case. And there are so many of these. This is where working with a trainer in person, obviously, that experiments with the nuances. You look at the dog's response as at a much lower level before you're stuck there, before you just have to get through. You've got nothing else, and you're too deep in it to get any of these things. I would be getting, if I came to your house, which I'd love to do, we would stand on your doorstep and just take a step or two out, and I would condition it there over and over and over and over, or from your car and out, over and over and over, back in. I would make that. I would probably do that. You probably wouldn't be interested in what I did anywhere else, because I would like, if the car can be counter conditioned or made to be a positive association with all these cozy, comfy, quiet music, food, whatever it is you can turn the car into, I will go nuts and turn my vehicle into.
He's happy in the car, but he is a little, when we go to the park and we're first getting out, especially if anybody's nearby, he's a little skittish about getting out. I mean, he always does, but he can be, he gets out kind of like,
Yes, but this is one of my other points.
What would you do with that?
I would get out, because he lives in fear. We have to use that's his normal, right? He's already kind of flooded, and he's so sensitized to these emotions, and he's got these entrenched coping mechanisms that may or may not serve him. A lot of these sound like they don't, but he doesn't know any better.
Right.
So I would find a place I could get him out and go to a mat. One of the things I do with a stationary behavior, if the dog can go to a mat, anytime you can go to a mat so they can rest and decompress and get massage, get whatever to calm them down, but go to a mat and then back in the car. Go to a mat, back in the car. I'd roll up my little mat, take it a little further, go to the mat. I'd make it such a positive association to where he could find relief. What I'd be teaching your dog is, where can he trust on me? When I'm talking about finding places to hide, I try and find places where there won't be so much going on, that I can find a place and decompress, bring the dog down, massage, calm down, sniff, toss treats in the grass, get them doing anything. What's his best coping technique that serves him best? And I'd be reinforcing that and paying that and paying that, but I'd have to look at it with my eyes. Yeah. I would have to see what his best, when he comes out the car and he's all squished and his tail's down, what is his best moment? Getting back in the car, the moment we turn and go towards the car, I'd be putting everything I could on a cue. So he would learn. Predictability is another one on my list. You being predictable and having strategies that you've seen make the dog feel better, and that you can give them the cue that you're going to go do, and then practicing. I wouldn't be going very far. I'd be finding remote places and just getting out and sniffing and relaxing, going to mat, getting back in the car. So I'd be back chaining, right? I'd be putting the end result, getting back home, on such a strong cue. And then I would insist on a few nice steps before we turn around and go back in the car. I would insist on that attention. I would, he's obviously got a conditioned emotional response to be able to eat while the trigger is happening. Whoever had him before, whoever you worked with, she's done a great job there. And you can do that if you've got enough distance. So for everybody else, if you've got enough distance between you and the thing, there's a technique called, I will just type it in here. Look at that I don't use a lot. because I don't like the dog sitting still when things are approaching or things are happening. I like to bail first, but it's only one tool in a toolbox of many tools. Some cases, like Barb is saying, it's not the tool to use, and look at that is the tool. And feeding in the presence of the trigger at a distance they can handle it can soothe them, because feeding's incompatible with fear. They won't eat when they're too afraid. So if we teach them to eat and work with us, again, they're getting paid, and they're getting paid for just seeing the trigger or hearing the trigger or feeling the trigger.
I've been doing this thing where I say, look at me.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
And if he turns to look at me while he's afraid, I give him food.
Yes.
If he looks me in the eye when he's not afraid, because I do it when he's not afraid.
Yes. Yes.
And now he does it when he's afraid. He's not as good at it, but
you've got something.
I can get him to look me in the eyes, then it's, you know.
Yeah, so you're taking that good response he had when he had to look at the trigger and eat food. Now if he can look at you and eat food, the fear is the predictor there. You're trying to use the fear as the antecedent.
Doing both as I'm walking. Like I'm just feeding him. Hey, look at me. Hey, you want a treat? Hey, and talking to him as the trigger passes.
Yes.
But
now
one more thing about the in front. I let him walk. Should I never let him walk in front of me?
No, it's fine. As long as you're not being dragged or there's tension. If there's tension, you need to not be rewarding tension.
Because it's
like fine. They can walk in front of you.
You know, he has a range. And so if he's like up to here, a little tense, I can work with the stop, pull back. I do back. He backs up a little bit, the tension and the leash releases, and then we walk forward. But if he's a little bit beyond that, it just doesn't work.
Exactly. When they're over threshold, learning stops, and being able to do anything but the most entrenched behavior responses that meet their need for safety, you've got nothing. You've only got the most conditioned behaviors that they believe works for them. So you're saying you're seeing him get tense a little bit. Oh, sorry, somebody's coming through.
It's that some of the things you're saying I'm violating. A
lot that's of the okay. Yes, and that's where I want. I think everybody should tune in and watch us. Me, just get in the car for the next one, and I'll be at your house, and we'll do this, because I could see we could work on this. I think you're blowing through mini thresholds, and then you've got nothing, or you're just making do with what the hodgepodge that you have. I would back up and get my antecedent behavior consequence. I would get that so straight, I would be boring you, but I would not be boring your dog. So I would find everything in life, and I would give your dog nothing the day until I get there. Nothing, no food, no nothing. I mean, of course, water, but just wait for mealtime till I get there. And you got a hungry dog or a dog that wants to play, you've got needs that need to be met, or a potty. And I would say, these are the conditions for us to meet your needs. These are the conditions. And I only need a little tiny bit, and then we meet your needs. Little tiny bit of cooperation and working. Remember point number 3, working for me. I need the dog to exist, to work for me. I don't want to be micromanaging the dog. I don't want to be telling the dog all the time. I bet you give a lot of feedback, and the two of you just keep moving. So you are inadvertently reinforcing, and it's tough because you're just trying to exercise the dog. I'd have to show you in your
and
case.
Myself. Your
case is so significantly entrenched, and you got a Desi dog, for those who don't know. So this is just something they weren't prepared for. It's just an environment they just weren't prepared for, right, Irene? Is that the right way to say it? Irene's our Desi dog expert.
Yeah, well, I mean, though they certainly are, they're variable. They're not all as Kuno is on and I fostered him when he was returned the first time, or when he was returned.
Oh, so you know his best.
I know him, and he's on the extreme of fearfulness.
Yes.
They're not all that. I don't want to put them all in there, but certainly they're more likely to be cautious.
Right.
And I think for him it's challenging because of course Barbara lives in a fairly urban, quite an urban area, and that just gives a lot more things to be afraid of.
Exactly. It's called flooding, for those who don't know. when a dog gets too much, anybody gets too much stimulus happening at once that you can't process and digest the one stimulus you're trying to learn. Problem with Kuno's case is he's so overstimulated by so many different things. He's almost got agoraphobia, it sounds like to me. Like, just being out there is hard. Like the feel of threat, he feels threatened. Did you hear the language she's describing? If any of you have the fearful reactive dogs, you know, when they're squished or their ears are tense or they splat down or they're looking and the whites of the eyes are showing, or they're using movement, their increased movement, hypervigilant scanning of the environment or listening, they're just prepared for a threat and they haven't learned to cope. So really, in Barb's case, he has not learned to cope with the environment and he's just in it every day, and they're doing the best they can. But I would go back to where he doesn't feel the fear, and I would practice my training there, and I would expose him to a dose of the fear and then back off, a dose of the fear and back off. Same with aggression or frustration. You want a dose of it so that you can control it and then back off. You have to do setups. There's no other way around it, where we can control the setup, where it's not a bad dose of the trigger. There's just a small dose of the trigger and then we back off. Just want to quickly say here, there's a couple of things I hadn't put in. U-turns, I bend down low and drag something across the floor and get the dog's nose down, or drop a trail. I use food a lot relentlessly. So some people may not feel comfortable with that. We could still help you, but I need you to understand the principle. The dog's working me for a reward. And it's not guarding me from some dog out there. It's not barking at the car or lunging, or they're working me to get them to put the head down and sniff, to eat, or to play tug, or play a game, or just get relief from fear. Just relief, feel safety. I don't need food. I don't need, or attention, affection. Often dogs don't want that when they're overstimulated. So that doesn't work for a lot of situations. You got to have different tools in your toolbox. I'm not knocking anything that works whatsoever. I have so many different layers of tools, but I find a place where the dog can practice. I find equipment that sets me up for success. I do drills where the dog feels comfortable over and over again. I will go back in the house and back out, and back in the house and back out. I will find a safe place and relax, and then go out a little bit and then come back and relax. I get that dog obedient. I'll work on obedience and them listening to me with tension on the leash, following me. I'll make sure they can go to a mat, lay down. I'm not an obedience trainer at all. People send their dog to me and I'm like, I'll let them jump on the couch. I care about behaviors that work or hurt the humans or hurt the dogs, hurt our lives together. We're just trying to live together. We're not trying to make it perfect here. We just want to live together. But reactivity needs more structure to cope. You need to identify what the dog hasn't learned to cope with. Then if there's other things stacking on that the dog hasn't coped with, like with Kuno's case, he's got so many things he hasn't learned to truly cope with. I find a place they can cope and I build it up until we can put it on a cue and go, remember that feeling you had of feeling good, like when we're inside on a mat or when we're in the car, wherever they feel good. I try and take that and make it predictable, put it on a cue. So one of the things I will do is I'll teach them a U-turn in the house or in the yard. So we'll be just going along when they're not pulling me. And all of a sudden, for the people with bad backs, this is horrible, but I've got a broken back in 3 places this last year, and I still do it because it's so useful. I bend to the ground and I get their attention on the ground and I turn tightly. Remember, I've already trained that when I turn away when I'm standing up, I'm going to be leaving. If they take all day or turn side, it doesn't, I'm leaving. I'm not following a dog that pulls. So when I bend down and do it and bring something, a toy or food to the ground and do a tight U-turn, I get their eyes off the environment and onto the ground. And when a dog's nose is on the ground, they relax more. So I would be teaching Kuno nose work and find it. I'd be doing scent work. I would get him thinking out of his brain about his environment and I would teach him to be a ground tracker and work with me, just go identify this plant, go identify this, and stop scanning the environment. But he's also auditory. I might use dog muffles. I've never used them before, but I'd be experimenting, right? I'd be layering in as many things. And then I'd be trying to find the times of day where you know where you can go, where there's not a lot going on, and you can practice. The number one thing I want everyone to have in their belt right now is that you need to go back and forth and not in a straight line and not on a walk when you've got a reactive dog. Need to get control at a much lower level, closer to the safe zone where you can calm down. So I'm going to rattle off a few points, and then I'm going to just quickly take some questions. We may go a little over, I think. It's an underlying anxiety, whether it's fear or frustration. We can come back to this. We can do another breakout group. I would love to hear each person's case, but anxiety is what we're really dealing with. So where can the dog listen to you and build that up like it's gold? Put it on a cue. I can teach you this. I can teach anything I'm saying. I can teach you. So we have let's go. We have U-turns. So let's go is just well, when I've turned my back or when I've done U-turns, when I say, let's go, that's before they've even seen me turn my back. And then I turn my back. Once I've taught them that I just stop and turn and I go, and then I stop and turn and I go, and I stop and turn and I go, I can put it on a cue called let's go. I can raise my hand up in the air and go, let's go. The dog will whip around before they've even thought about it because it's been conditioned. So that can save you in a lot of situations, but you have to condition it. The one Barb mentioned, which is counter conditioning in the presence of a trigger, where you see the trigger, you just feed. Take up these food bowls for a minute. Take your food, mix it with some chicken or some beef, just something in the Instapot or something, a cooked rotisserie. Take a chunk, just mix it up in a baggie with the kibble and start taking it out on walks. When your dog pays attention to you, turns away, comes away from any distraction, you want to use intermittent reinforcement. So you don't pay every time, but you pay pretty big and really well occasionally, and enough to get the dog interested in how to get you to pay. I use tug every time I can with any dog. Even if they don't like tug, I will try and build it. I'll find something I can control, some reason, a stick to chew on, a flappy thing to move around, and I will whip it out and get their attention before they've lost the ability to cope. And I'll reward them with a quick burst of play, and then I'll feed them for playing with me. So I'll build up the ability to control their interest instead of on the environment, on the things that I have. So I talked about, look at that. That is a technique, but it's not one I use a lot of. Oh, here we go. There's some questions here. What would you suggest as a distraction for dogs that aren't food motivated? Games. You've got to find something where they either chase, they want to find or sniff. Even for dogs that won't tug or chase something, that I can control, like a little mini flirt pole out on the walk, they will sniff and track. So you've got to find one of the areas that's a positive thing the dog will do, put it on a cue, work on it, so that you can go find it, and you can toss chicken in the grass, get them to sniff, but that's off the trail, and you can't do that if they're freaking out. These are just things you do before the dog's freaking out. So what I, last but not least, is what do you do in an emergency? You're now in the thick of it. The dog's freaking out. People have just surprised you. You weren't ready for it. This is where you need your down on the mat and your counter conditioning for the trigger that you can feed. You want to get the dog's attention on the ground stat. You want to get their nose on the ground, their eyes on the ground, anything you can do to bring them to the ground and start digging in the dirt. I don't care what you do, but start practicing getting your dog's attention on the ground. Feed them there, pet them there, soothe them there. See if you can bring the dog down. Even when they're reactive, you want to bring them to the ground if you can. The ground is incredibly powerful. It's just soothing. All the stimulation up here, and then the ground's just, it's just so primal to a dog. Even in urban places, you can just, what's this smell right here? Smell for dogs is so powerful. Some dogs, again, this doesn't work for every dog. That's why we have so many tools and so many different trainers. I have a toolbox, and if I don't find one tool that works, I will go through and find the tool that works for that dog. So there's no one answer here. But in an emergency, I'll bring them down to the ground as soon as I can, and then I will turn and I will just focus on ground and leaving and ground and leaving. I never look at the problem, and I never watch the dog passively at any other time. I'll tell you, everybody that's dealing with anxiety, reactivity, fear, frustration, your dog is learned to tune you out. So I just spend a lot of time, 5 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a day is all I do on every dog I have. When I walk in the room, they want me. When a dog's playing with another dog, they will leave that dog and come to me. When something happens, they will leave it and come to me because I've just built it up. So in a crisis, if I'm caught with my knickers down, if I'm caught short, I'll hunker down, go to the ground, do whatever I can, drag a smell, and just get their eyeballs and turn around and just bail as gracefully as I can. But you do not want to be standing up, looking out. You don't want to be passively looking at the dog, because that just tells the dog he's on his own. And a lot of us don't understand what that means. The dog feels like they take over because we're doing nothing. So when we're so passive, we're just watching. Catch yourself tomorrow. Just walk your dog tomorrow and count how many times you look at your dog. I only look at a cooperative dog. So Barb, that might be one for you too. I only look at the dog when I make them look at me. Think farmer. Think more farmer. Tap into your farmer. I got to get this dog to work the sheep. I don't got time. I got to get this dog to work the sheep. I'm focused on the sheep. We're moving things. The dog will join in from a young age and learn to join in and be part of a working team. We have to recreate that to the best of our ability. I know this was a bit rushed, and there's so many things I have here. Prior preparation is go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Take I was just going to say, if you finished your list of, it was 10. I think there was 10 tips, right? We do have one more question, but if you're still,
please, no,
if you have more to,
the list is done. Go for questions.
Okay. So we do have one. You answered, I think you touched on, someone asked about if your dog's not food motivated. Yes. What do you do? You had a few things.
Scent and tug. I'll find a game I can use. I will bring out scent and tug. Carry on. What's next?
And the next one is the dog from, I like this, from Galaxy Note 10. Earlier, Galaxy Note 9 was speaking, but now Galaxy Note 10 is chiming in. I love it when the device becomes the person. But in this question, you can read it yourself, of course, but the dog I have will use a crate for safety and runs out and back into the crate. Should she be rewarded when she comes out, other than praising her? That's an interesting question.
She feels more safe in the crate. Yes, you want to with a dog that's going back. Oh, there was somebody else and I didn't fully answer them, and I really wish I could go back in time. It was a previous call where the dog was running under the bed all the time. It is when they choose, finding a way to get them, calming things down, finding a quiet time, using barriers so that nothing else is scaring them, to go to an exit so they know the crate leads to the place they feel safe. Whatever it is they go into to feel safe. I've got the foster I've got that crunches people, eats people. He feels so safe in a den, and so we just reinforce it. We put all these great things in the den, but when he leaves the den on his own, we just spend a couple minutes just sitting down on the floor and feeding him, dropping a food trail. We make everything as calm as possible, so they come out of the crate, they get calm. You have things around the house for them to sniff and find food, hide food, and make it a game coming out the crate. There's a little trail to follow. Take pressure off when they come out the crate. Make everything as still and calm and quiet as possible when they come out the crate. Then let them go back in again. It's choices. Dogs that use the crate need choice. They want control. It's called learned helplessness. They just want to control something. And in the crate, there's less things they have to worry about. It's a controlled environment. They're asking for more structure and quieter, more control. They're saying they feel helpless out in the environment. It's too much agoraphobia, whatever it is. It's just a bit too much. So find a way to take the pressure off where they come out. And then, yes, really, I've had a lot of feral dogs. So they do a lot of this hiding, and people are dragging them out sometimes because they've got nothing else they can do right there in the moment. I make it pay massively to come out the crate, and I make sure those puzzle toys are out. They're too big to drag in the crate or heavy, or have them tied down. So they come out. It's a choice. There's no pressure to come out. Take pressure off and massively reward when they come out, and let them choose to go back in. That's what the actual cement in that training sequence is. When they go back in and feel relief, they learn that coming out was okay. But if they can't get back to the crate, they didn't learn nothing. Okay, next one.
Next one, I like this one just because I've had the same situation with several fosters who didn't like one household member. And in this case, it's Therese, and it's that adorable little collie mix that you that you adopted.
Yes.
Quite a few of us were ogling when he was still available. You can probably read it here, but he lunges and barks.
Here he is.
Teresa, is it Teresa?
It's Therese, yes. And this is Leo.
This is him.
This is him, and he's a great boy. He's a love with everybody except this poor kid is trying his best. But
how old's your son?
13.
Okay, he's at that. Yeah, dogs often have this with men or adolescent boys or just kids. They often have one person that just scares them. The erratic movements, the unpredictability. I saw the fearfulness in your dog. I could see a little anxiety, a little sensitivity, just a little tiny bit of fear. I would just say that in the few seconds I just saw your dog, they tend to go a bit OCD, and they try and control what they don't understand. So your son just needs to become more predictable, and everything good, take away everything good that's happening for the dog and make it happen when your son moves. And break it down so it's a short movement, it's predictable, it's at a distance, you've got the dog on a nice long leash in the house or whatever, the sun pops out, and instead of getting any other treats for anything or even food, I just use food at training time instead of just putting the ball down. We'll train it for something. So the sun comes out and it predicts, it's counter conditioning, predicts Christmas Day. Your son runs or darts or moves, predicts Christmas Day. I would stop giving so much affection. I would exercise more, just briefly. I would I would use the dog's crate away time, and I would say, my son just ran across the room. It's time for you to come out and get cuddles on the couch. I saw how much he likes cuddles on the couch. But I would stop giving stuff for free. I'm really tough, and not everybody is this way. I'm incredibly tough and incredibly positive. I will take away all the dog's freedom. They don't get my house. They have to earn it. They don't get my time. They have to earn it. And they earn it just by a moment of calm. It's real simple for them to earn it. It's real easy. Your son just appears, one moment of not reaction, and I pay. I give all my time. I give the attention. And if there's a reaction, I have a consequence. I take attention away. I go away, the dog goes away. It's never a punishment. It's never a punishment, but it's a consequence. The crate has amazing things in it. It's great, but it's not me. The crates, and I only do this with dogs that love a crate or wherever they go. So I put the dog away. I have the dog come out, the sun moves, and they get to come out and enjoy the room. And they get to be fed like rotisserie chicken or Instapot meat. I'll make up and I'll mix in the kibble, and I'll just give a handful. I'll have your son drop to the ground at a distance. Make it a fun game. But we need to counter condition your son, or he'll get so frustrated with that not working, his whatever behaviors he's doing to help him cope, he'll escalate. Usually, not always, but usually they'll escalate because they're not getting control. Their needs aren't getting met. He wants safety and predictability in your son. Then I will also work with your son on how to be. There's a wonderful kids and dogs resources. I think it's called Dog Gone, but I may have to come back and post that in the link later if you want to remind me. But there's a beautiful kids and dogs, teaching them to just walk slower, have their hands down. At other times when you're not doing a setup, if you can try and just bring it down to more predictable, less erratic. In your son, if your son could just be more sitting still, and your son needs to be the provider, the predictor of everything good. Everybody else is safer than your son We got to change it to where your dog is literally getting paid for your son's existence, and we can transform it. Not always, sometimes it just isn't a fit, but we can transform it with counter conditioning. It is very powerful.
Marta, each time we do one of these calls, there's always like a couple nuggets, at least I pull out and try to point. Last time it was the ground greeting. I'm still fixating on the ground greeting for dogs that jump up when they, and this time I really like the distinction you made between punishment and consequences, because I think people who believe in the all positive, and of course, none of us want to be beating our dogs or hitting our dogs. We feel like therefore it's praise or nothing.
Right.
And the idea of a consequence, it's not a terrible thing, but it's something being taken away. I think that's a really important. It kind of takes the energy out of the punishment praise, which kind of thing is right or better, or that nothing happens when the dog does something wrong. So I really like that distinction. I think that's really, really helpful. We got a bunch of questions stacking up here.
Cool.
And I enjoyed that one because I have a son too that frequently a teenager. The challenge, of course, is that not only does the dog need training, but the teenager does too. And teenagers are often challenging to train. Go ahead,
yes, they are. And Teresa, I just want to invite you to write into OPH training email. Please put that question and I will give you a big plan. I can help you with that. If your kid gets up and walks, the dog goes nuts, put him away immediately. Just it's not a punishment, but it is absolutely the consequence. He is losing his privileges of being free in a house by his behavior, but his behavior needs aren't going to be met. So it doesn't fix it, but it starts to make him think about it. He needs your son. Just if your son starts to get up and we make it rain chicken, we need to counter condition that in a way he can succeed. Sorry, Irene, I did not mean to introduce. I just didn't want to leave her because that's such a serious one.
Okay, thank you.
I enjoyed your answer when you said when the dog reacts to the son, put him away, and the him of course could apply to either the dog or the kid. And anyone with a teenage son may think I would just pop him away if I could, put him in a room and keep him in trouble for a minute. But actually, we have a couple questions now about leashes. One about my dog is afraid of everything, especially the leash. Once the leash goes on, she shuts down.
Oh, I love this.
The recent one is similar. My dog recently adopted is very reactive anytime she sees the leash or harness. So fear of harness, fear of leash, and overly reactive on the leash. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, again, counter conditioning has been the theme tonight, but counter conditioning, Google it. Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. Pick up the leash without anything to do. The dog feels trapped. Don't ever forget, even when we get the dog over the leash, don't forget the leash represents not being able to get away. If it's on their neck, they feel violated sometimes. They just feel imagine being dragged through stuff by somebody who doesn't understand you. We don't understand dogs as humans very well. And this is why we have so many problems with dogs. We want them, we love them, but we don't get it. Love isn't love unless you understand somebody's needs and meet those needs in a way that means it to them, not you. So we love our dogs, but we're not helping them sometimes. We're flooding them and we're teaching learned helplessness. So picking up the leash, desensitization and counter conditioning are our friends. These are very important basic tools. Science is our friend, science works. So we pick up the leash and before you feed every meal, you pick up the leash before you go to do something fun. You pick up that leash and you get a soft line that won't drag and catch on stuff and just leave it hanging around and feed when she notices it. It's a little bit where we have to go in the problem to fix it because they are going to be a bit squished with it on, but I've worked with so many dogs on this and just leave it alone and stop dragging them around and making them feel trapped. A long line, a 10-foot long line, give them space so that they can move without you controlling and manipulating them so much. Front fastening harness, and you just clip it to the front fastening harness. He's fine once it's on. So so he's being afraid with this one. He's being afraid of harnesses. Put it on, take it off. Put it on, feed, play, take it off. Put the dog away. Put it on, feed, play, whatever the dog wants. Make the leash going on, predict it. That will cure it. In 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, I can guarantee that I can get the dog over that. Okay, for the 1 out of 10 that doesn't work, you get back to me. Oh, I have gotten muted, or you're muted, or something. You're muted, I think.
Sorry, darn, trying to, sorry. I was gonna say, we're almost to time. We have one more question, so let's take that last question, then we'll wind up.
Okay.
And it is from Alicia Galvin. Alicia and I actually spent New Year's Eve together trapping a dog. There was an escaped dog. So Alicia, nice to see you again, or to sort of 4:30 a.m. We got a dog to go on a trap, Marty. You've seen some of the trapping posts recently.
Yes,
anyways,
I love those.
This was
Very
different
exciting.
New Year's Eve, but on a very, very cold night. So good to see you still with the OPH crew here, Alicia. And you can see your dog is overly friendly. When he sees other dogs, he'll lie down to approach to play, and if it gets frustrated if they don't come to play, and then we'll start jumping on me to play with him. I'm thinking of the ground greeting last time, but this isn't a greeting. What do you suggest for that? And we'll wind up with this question.
So it's the greeting, did you say?
No, I'm saying this actually is not a greeting. So she's saying that when and
I'm
actually
trying to find it.
Oh, it's a couple up from the bottom. I took them out of order because there were 2 leash ones. My dog is overly friendly. When he sees other dogs, he will lie down until they approach him to play. Gets frustrated when other dogs don't play with him and will start jumping.
Okay, yes.
And
so that's a brilliant example. Oh, sorry, you're cutting out. I can't tell if you're talking or not, Irene.
So I was just noticing, I'm not sure Alicia is actually still on the call as I look.
Okay,
I think
we'll answer it anyway, because this is a great one. The dog, remember we talked about coping mechanisms? Frustration gets dogs in trouble. We have to dial it back. The dogs learned the end of the chain. I get to play with dogs. We have to put more steps in where playing with dogs is not expected every time. It needs to be intermittent. It needs to be a lot more not playing with dogs expectations. And playing with them. If this is Alicia, this is almost identical to one I think I got in the past and maybe not got to fully explore. So I'd love to get this one in. If this is the one I've heard twice, but it's he'll lie down because that's an invitation. Calming signals by Turid Rugrass, best book ever. Dogs have so many signals they send out, and lying down is a play one. But then if they get, remember, extinction is the cruelest thing to do to a learner. To just suddenly make things go away that they were expecting or depended on, to just suddenly cut them off, makes people, learners, animals fall apart. It's psychologically damaging sometimes. Just for a minute, we can get them over it. But he's getting frustrated, and then he's directing it on you to meet his needs. Meet my needs. That dog needs to learn to dial down frustration in every area. I would put a lot more structure and a lot less expectation of play with other dogs. More of his needs are being met externally with other dogs than they are with the handler, the human, or the toys or the food. So I'd put more into that. I'd focus so much on not playing with other dogs, and then calm. That lying down gets rewarded with other dogs, but intermittently. And there's a cue that you the dog's just expecting to play. Dog's just expecting it, demanding it, expecting it. We really need to break that down into a more cooperative dog that learns how to handle their shish. He needs to go to emotional gym. And I know how to do it. If you need to write in, we can teach you how to do that. But really simple stuff. Anything online that's just discipline, obedience, focus, calm, positively done. But more on you with the toys, more on you with the tug, more on you with the food, more of you and settling down. And then it won't be so disappointed or crushed when the dogs don't play with him, because his needs, the underlying need, you can't punish that away. You can't make that go away. That dog needs play. He's become addicted to it. It depends on it. Other dogs leave him alone. So the person needs to step in more and be way more of a resource to that dog. And dog play is a freaking treat that you get occasionally. You don't demand anything. That's a dog demanding. And I don't get dogs demanding me to provide anything or something else. I'm pretty strict on that. You know, I just do stuff with them until they're addicted on me. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's fascinating. And actually I can pass this on to Alicia, or send her this
Okay.
recording, this
Yay.
challenge.
The beauty
So,
of
so I think we're a little bit past, and you have answered all the questions that came in. So why don't we stop here? Again, this was recorded, so it'll be available for people to watch again. I think we'll presumably do another call in a couple weeks. If you need help, reach out to training@ophrescue.org. So this was great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We had a big crowd today, which was awesome. And hopefully
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marnie, for
Thank
being
you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marnie.
Thanks, Irene. Super appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Marnie.